Alright, today I wanted to, with as many dyno videos as we've been doing lately, I wanted to show you guys just kind of how it works. I mean, mainly this is our monitor screen. This is where our little control tower, where we control the engine here. And in here we can control, as far as the engine goes, we can control all the management as far as fuel and ignition and timing and etc. from this laptop, which correlates into the computer that runs the motor. Then we have this computer for the actual dyno itself, and what this is a big water brake that applies load to the back of the crankshaft and then measures a specified amount of torque. And so basically this is, right here is our throttle. So it's a electronic throttle. This is what controls, you know, basically what your foot would normally be doing. And then this handle, this is a load handle. This, you can manually put a certain applied load onto the back of the crankshaft, which is, you know, you can check air fuels and check torque at that certain RPMs. So that's handy to have. But this particular dyno, it's has an automatic sweep feature where you can just give it specified RPM. I'll show you how we do that here. And it says, you know, asks us for auto sweep. We say yes. And then you type in, you know, what the motor is. This one happens to be a 572, one of our NRE hot rod series. And then you give it a specific number that where you want it to start the pull. So we're asking at 4,400 RPM and end the pull at 6,200 RPM. And when you do that, you end up getting a recording. See the red hash marks right there? You get a recorded data recording between those hash marks. Also, what you see right here, this is a horsepower gauge. This is raw horsepower uncorrected. So what you see on that needle is less than the actual horsepower because it has to go through correction factors. Right there is raw torque, water temperature, then you've got oil pressure, and then the way, I mean, you can set this, you can actually set this main page up very differently. But I like to see air-fuel ratio left and right. It's important to know what your air-fuel ratio is. What that is it's sensing a mixture of oxygen and fuel. So it tells you if you're rich or lean. We run a lot of turbocharged motors here, so there's a boost pressure, but this motor particular is non-turbo. But then you have oil temperature, very important, especially on dyno. Water temperature again, and then we've got two fuel pressures because on our turbo motors we use a secondary injector, but in this motor we would just have the primary injector. But that gives you a whole ton of information when you're actually doing the pull. Now over here, although we're not using it on this motor, is an 8-cylinder exhaust gas temperature. So you can measure exhaust gas temperatures in each cylinder at every RPM in the pull, and that's really helpful when you're getting into, you know, super tuning, and also can tell you when a cylinder's, you know, not working well because it'll be cold. And you can see normally, you know, these come out here and you can see which cylinders are lagging behind in heat. That's kind of a neat feature. But so this is the control station, and here is our oh shit button. You get in trouble, you can push this and it kills all the power to the motor, just in case throttle sticks. Turn on our fuel pumps. This is a specific amount of load that you can apply to the motor. So if you got a motor that's really torquey, you might want to add a little bit more water to it so you can pull it down. You can adjust the throttle blades. You know, you want a little more throttle, you can adjust that from there. And then turning on power, you know, ignition to your computer and a start button. But that might be a little more helpful when you're watching some of the dynos for some of you that haven't seen it before. And then we'll walk into the dyno room and kind of show you what's going on in the dyno room. So we use a DTS dyno. It's been one of the best investments we've ever done in our company. It's just run for 4 or 5 years now, just getting totally beat. And it's just flawless. It just works really good. So over here we've got a console tower where we, you know, can measure all sorts of things like exhaust gas temperature. So these are all the leads that, you know, we connect into the motor. You can see them all falling off into the engine somewhere to monitor something. Now over here we've got water going in and out of the motor. And what we like to do to keep it clean is we put the water tower in the back of the dyno. So this basically is essentially our radiator. So that we fill that with water and then it cycles through the motor on the engine itself. Now, one thing we've done a little different in this dyno room is we exhaust the air. Rather than plumbing it out through mufflers, we just exhaust it. This is a huge 4-foot exhaust fan, and then we've got a 4-foot exhaust entry area where it gets fresh, clean air. And you can get, well, let's turn on this fan. You can get an idea how powerful it is. All the excess exhaust gas out of the room so we can run it uncorked or in a real world condition where we run mufflers, etc. We don't like to run the fuel in the room, although that's sometimes an alcohol tank. Okay, so we're outside of the dyno room right now, and this is where we use, we've got a pump gas cell and a race gas cell. Like on the turbo motors, we usually run pump gas on the primary injector and race gas in a secondary injector where we split the cells. So this is where we fill. We don't like to keep fuel in the dyno room, so this is kind of where we fill everything up. Right here is basically a servo motor that controls the throttle. So when I pull the throttle up there, it pushes and pulls this lever, which then connects down to the motor, to the throttle blade itself. Right, here's the water brake, and this is actually what's called a strain gauge, and this is what actually measures the amount of torque that the crankshaft is applying. This is actually a dual brake, and then if you look close you can see the starters. This setup's got dual starters inside the dyno, so we don't have to put a starter on the motor when we're running it, and that's a nice help too. Another cool thing is when we want to do valve adjustments, we've got a remote deal that just connects right into the starter, and if you want to crank it, you can crank the motor and adjust the valves, and that makes it another nice thing. And that's the beauty of a dyno, is you can end up running the motor, doing everything that you got to do, and before you ever put it in the car. Oil leaks, water leaks, maybe you got a mechanical problem, and you really get a lot of data that you wouldn't get in the car. So it's definitely a good thing to do. So what I'm about to do right now is we're going to do a pull. So what you'll see is I'm going to take the throttle and put it to maximum throttle. I'm going to set an RPM level in which I want it to travel, and then I'll tell the computer this is the RPM I want it to travel. I'll press enter, and it's going to start to sweep, and it'll record all the data between the start of the pull and the end of the pull, and that'll really give me a lot of information as to where to go with the tune-up. Take a look at what the power level was. So on that pull is 727 horsepower, 704 foot-pounds. And we look at the air-fuel ratios. The air fuels are in the 12s, and good oil pressure throughout the pool. The oil temperature, water temperature are fine. So then I make a decision on where do I want to go for tuning it.